Hello and welcome to Affinity. We're going to look now at layers and how they've changed from version 1 to version 2 and the things that you can do, including some of the problems that can come up and how to get around them. So, first of all, this is version 1 here and layers appear here. Layers are, of course, they are just like literally layers one above the other, and you can combine them by having this as some special adjustments. You can have them by poking holes in the one above, and so on. It is a non-destructive method, which means you can always go back and change things somewhat later. So what we have here is we just have a bit of space on the left here, a icon of the image and the name. It is defaults to background, and what it is, the type of layer it is, and it's a pixel layer. And there's a lock, padlock, which you can turn off there. It comes locked, the basic layer, or turn on up there, and the little checkbox there you can turn on and off, and the layer which is selected is blue. In the version 2, it's a slightly different here. We've got this layer on the edge here, and there, if you hover over that, we say it's a pixel because the word pixel has disappeared from here. I find this a bit of a problem when I've got a big layer, because I've got to scan down. I can't tell what all the things are. But there we go. So now if I add an adjustment to this, let's start with a version 1, and I go to the adjustments here and add an adjustment which I'll say black and white, so a quick way of doing something visible here. Then it is indented quite a long way here to show that this is a child, that the background is the parent, and again in brackets there you've got the type of thing it is. If I rename that to say mono, I can still see here that it's a black and white adjustment. If I go here and I go down to here and to black and white, then the indentation is done differently here. It's mainly using this vertical bar, and you can indent multiple layers so you can get multiple bars here. The next one here is that little circle here. It's actually a copy of the circle down here, an adjustment. And if you get and hover over that, that tells you what this is, because there's an icon here which is different for each adjustment, so you may eventually learn the ones you use most. But if I click on this here to rename it and call it mono, if I'm just looking at it, I can't really tell what adjustment it is unless I hover over here, or I know already what that is. So I prefer to have the name after it, but that's as it is at the moment. Maybe they'll change it. So if I'm going to put in another layer now, in here, if I go to adjustments and say do recolor, again a quick layer one that'll is quite visible here. The change I've made, it's gone above here, and the reason it's gone above here because I was already had selected the mono layer, and it would then try to make the recolor a child of the mono layer, which doesn't make sense, so it throws it above here. When you put these in here and when you select them, you just click on the icon once. The controls always come up here, and I can hit delete here. By the way, if I've got something like this here and I hit delete, that gets rid of that there, but sometimes it doesn't work because the focus is on the control. So if in doubt, if you want to delete something, if you right click it, you can always work to delete it there if that's causing a problem. That hasn't changed, but it's something that can cause confusion. You're hitting delete and it's not deleting it because it's blued, but the focus is actually on another window somewhere else. So if I want to put in another one, I just have to select the background here, which selects the whole group, so it's all blue there, and then I can go and put in the recolor there, and it puts it above this. And it's something similar in version 2 here, that if I put in the recolor here, it would appear above, so I could select the main group here, the parent, and go to adjustments and recolor down here. These I'm using, by the way, I always use the adjustments here because my eyes are over here. You can always, of course, go over to layer here and use these, and you will see, of course, there are lots and lots of controls here. I'm not going to talk about all those because some of them are duplicated over here. Some of them you can get by right clicking and they'll get more information down here, but it's just going to take ages to do. So what about moving things around the place? So if I go over to this one here, if I want to put the mono above the recolor here, how do I do that? So I drag up here. I can't see any sort of indication happening here. And so if I go over the icon there, I get that little vertical blue bar. It's a bit tricky to see sometimes because other bits are showing, but I let go of that and you could see the effect already because it previews it. So now I've gone to recolored it and then done a mono on the recolor. In here, if I want to do that here, if I go up here, then well, actually I'm going to start to show the difference here. When I click on the recolor here, this is selected here, the group is shown as faded. I drag up here and there's a bit of a blue line here, but I've got three lots of blue going on here, which is a bit tricky to see. And if I put it here, and by the way, don't go over the text for now, always go over the icon. And let's see if I can drop that into there. And it's actually gone back down here, so it hasn't changed. It's done the recolor, but the mono's gone below and got this little grey line here. So that can be a bit tricky. And hit Control Z to go back to as it was and see another little grey line at the bottom. I'm going to talk about that grey line in another video. But if I want to put this above here, I'm going to drag it up onto the image there, onto the little icon, so the whole thing lights up. There's not a vertical blue bar, but it's kind of the equivalent, and let that go. And now that little grey line is underneath. So that's kind of tricky, some of the tricks here. With this as well, there's more things available here. So if I go to Arrange, and if I say Move Forward one, and then watch what happens to the recolor. See, the recolor's moved up. I've moved it up there. So this is another way of actually moving these layers here. So moving back one is the Control left square bracket. So I could be on this, Control left square bracket. It moves it down. There we go. Control right square bracket, Control left square bracket. There we go. So we can move those up and down with the keys, shortcut keys, or with this. This is also useful in the Arrange here if you're doing macros to move things around. It generally doesn't like you dragging things. So using the control keys here gives you more control. What if I want to move this all the way to the top here? So I click on the mono here. I want to move it to the above. I can drag it up until there's a little line, little horizontal line there. And I drag that. That has now put that above the background. In version 1, if I wanted to drag that up there, you can't see anything here, and so it's nothing's going to happen. So what you'd have to do is select it and then move it. You've got to select it first and then move it up, and then it appears. Whereas here, when I had this, but now if I got recolor selected and I drag the mono, I can still put that up there, so it's a little bit easier to do than the original version. And again, the recolor now, I can put this up here. If I put that at the top, and I can literally go all the way up here, you can still see that little blue line, and I drop that and it's still appearing above there. When you've got these like this, I will often use groups rather than having all that tricks down here. That it's just a bit of a hassle sometimes. So if I'm particularly doing a lot of layers, I'll use groups. I could click this and shift click the bottom one to select them all, and then get a group, so Arrange Group here. Or I can just click the top one and shift click the bottom one and Control G, there we go, group that there. And I can click on the little icon there, which will open it, and you can see it now, it points downwards, and I've got this vertical bar here which will bring this across here. So there we go, that's enough for now. It's very similar, but there are some slight differences in how we appear here, and watch out for renaming that you know exactly what's going on. Anyway, that's it, and thank you very much for watching.